The space station Kepler-7 hung in the darkness like a metal flower, its lights reflecting off the endless black. Inside, Captain Teo stood before a long table, his hands steady but his heart beating fast. Across from him sat the Valthani delegation. They looked almost human except for their silver skin that seemed to catch light in strange ways, and their eyes that held the weight of 50,000 years of history. Tayo had prepared for this moment his entire life. He was Earth's representative, chosen to speak for all of humanity. He wore his dress uniform, dark blue with gold buttons that his daughter had polished that morning before he left. She was only 7 years old, and she had asked him if he would make the aliens happy. He had promised her he would try. The leader of the Valthani delegation was named Kira. She was tall and moved with perfect control, like water flowing downhill. She did not smile when Tayo entered the room. She simply looked at him with eyes that contained no warmth, only calculation. Tayo had read the reports about the Valthani. They were ancient. They had built empires before Earth's first humans learned to make fire. They had weapons that could destroy planets. They had medicine that could make people live for thousands of years. They were, in every way that mattered, superior. "Captain Teo," Kira said. Her voice was smooth and cold, like polished ice. "We have reviewed your proposal. We have read your request to join the Greater Galactic Council." "Thank you for meeting with us," Teo said. He kept his voice calm and respectful. "Humanity has much to offer." "You have nothing to offer," Kira interrupted. She was not being cruel, she was simply stating fact. "Your species has been spacefaring for less than 100 years. You possess no advanced technology. Your weapons are primitive. Your medicines are crude. You cannot even cure your own aging. Why would the Galactic Council waste its time on such a young and helpless species?" Teo had expected this. He had prepared responses, arguments, statistics. He wanted to explain that humans had accomplished more in 100 years than many species did in 1,000. He wanted to talk about human creativity, human determination, human heart. But looking at Kira's face, he realized that none of that would matter. She had already decided what humanity was worth. One of the other Valthani delegates, a man named Joras, leaned toward Kira and whispered something. Kira nodded slowly, and a small smile appeared on her face. It was not a kind smile. "The Council has decided to grant your species a provisional status," she said. "If you prove useful, you may survive. If you do not, Earth will be classified as a resource colony. Your government will be dismantled. Your people will work for the Galactic Council. This is generous, Captain. Most new species are not given even this opportunity." Teo felt something cold move through his chest. His hands wanted to shake, but he made them stay still. He thought of his daughter, polishing his buttons. He thought of billions of humans on Earth who had no idea that their entire future was being decided in this cold room. "That is not acceptable," he said quietly. The room went silent. The Valthani delegates turned their silver faces toward him, their eyes widening slightly. Joras stood up, anger flashing across his features. But Kira raised her hand, and he sat back down immediately. "You refuse?" Kira asked, as if she was asking about something very amusing, like a child's joke. "I refuse to accept that humanity is only valuable as workers," Teo said. He stood straighter. "We are different from other species, yes. We are young, yes. We are not as advanced as you. But we have something that no ancient civilization has. We do not think the way you do. We do not follow patterns that were set thousands of years ago. We break rules. We do things that do not make logical sense, but they work. That is our strength." Kira's eyes narrowed. For the first time, she looked at Teo as if he was something more than an insect. "You are claiming that your weakness is actually strength?" she asked. I am claiming that our unpredictability is a strength, Teo said. Yes. Kira stood up. She was very tall, almost a full head taller than Teo. She walked around the table until she was standing very close to him. This was dangerous. She could kill him with a single movement if she wanted to. Every instinct told Teo to step back. He did not step back. You interest me, Kira said finally. Not because I believe you, but because you are brave enough to argue with me. I have not met a young species that was brave enough to do that. Most of them beg, she paused. I will make you an offer, Captain Teo. A personal demonstration of this unpredictability you speak of. If you can prove that humans can do something we cannot predict, something that shows this hidden strength you claim to have, then I will recommend to the Council that humanity be given serious consideration. What kind of demonstration? Teo asked. A combat simulation, Kira said. I will face one of your best fighters in a controlled environment. If this fighter can do something that I cannot predict, something that shows me that humans think differently than we do, then you win. If not, then Earth becomes a resource colony, and your people work for us for the next 1,000 years. Teo knew this was a trap. The Valthani had 10,000 years of combat experience. They had fought in wars that spanned entire galaxies. There was no way a human fighter could win against Kira. But he also knew that humanity had no other choice. This was their only chance. I accept, he said. Kira smiled again, that cold, icy smile. Good. We will conduct the simulation in 3 days. You will bring your best warrior. I will bring only myself. The weapon will be your new Railbolt launcher, the experimental device I have reviewed in your military files. A weapon you have only recently invented. I am curious to see how you use it. She walked back to her chair and sat down. Until then, Captain, rest. Prepare yourself. In 3 days, we will see if humans truly have a strength or if you are simply foolish. Teo left the room and walked back to his quarters alone. Through the windows of the station, he could see Earth, a small blue circle in the infinite darkness. Somewhere down there was his daughter. She was sleeping now, dreaming of things that a 7-year-old dreams about. She did not know that tomorrow everything would change. He needed to send a message to Earth. He needed to tell them to prepare, not for war, but for a demonstration that would change everything. The Railbolt had been humanity's newest invention. It was a weapon designed to fire superheated projectiles at impossible speeds. It was crude compared to Valthani weapons, but it was powerful, and it was unpredictable in ways that the Valthani might not understand. Teo sat at his desk and began to write a secure message. He needed the best fighter Earth had to offer. He needed someone brave enough to face Kira, someone creative enough to surprise her, someone tough enough to survive. 3 days was not much time. Lieutenant Ji-woo received the message while he was sleeping in the military barracks on Earth. His commanding officer, Colonel Min-suk, woke him by turning on the lights in his small room. Ji-woo jumped to his feet immediately, his body moving on pure instinct. Even in sleep, a soldier remained ready. "We need you," Min-suk said simply. There was no time for long explanations. "Captain Teo wants you specifically. You need to be on a transport ship in 2 hours." Ji-woo was not surprised. He was the best combat fighter Earth had produced. He had won every single training match against both humans and the simulated combat systems they had created. He was fast, strong, and most importantly, he could think in ways that others could not. He did not follow the textbook approach to fighting. He broke rules, took risks, and did things that seemed impossible until they worked. But when he heard where he was going and what he was supposed to do, Ji-woo felt his stomach tighten. "I have to fight a Valthani," he said, not quite believing it. "One Valthani," Min-suk confirmed. "Named Kira. She is their greatest warrior. She has never lost a single combat engagement in recorded history. There are approximately 50,000 years of documented battles, and her record is flawless. Jiwoo sat on his bed. He was a brave man, but he was not stupid. I cannot win against someone like that, he said. Captain Teo believes you can, Minsuk said. Not because you are stronger or faster, but because you can do things she cannot expect. The transport ship took Jiwoo to Kepler 7. During the journey, he watched videos of Valthani combat techniques. They moved with perfect control. Every strike was exactly where it needed to be. Every defense was perfectly calculated. There was no waste, no unnecessary movement. It was like watching a machine that had been programmed to fight for 50,000 years. Jiwoo watched himself fighting in the training videos. His style was completely different. Sometimes he moved in ways that seemed inefficient or even clumsy. He took risks that made his coaches shake their heads. But those risks often paid off. He would do something unexpected, and his opponent would not know how to respond. By the time they reacted, Jiwoo had already moved to a new position. It was not perfect technique. It was chaos that somehow worked. When he arrived at Kepler 7, Captain Teo met him in the docking bay. Teo looked tired, but his eyes were clear and focused. I need to explain something, Teo said. Kira has already made up her mind about what she expects to see. She thinks you will fight with the same pattern that all human fighters use. She has studied our military training manuals. She knows our standard techniques. She will be ready for that. Then I should not use standard techniques, Jiwoo said. No, Teo agreed. You should not. You should fight like you always fight, like Jiwoo fights. Not like the military taught you to fight, but like you have learned to fight. The unpredictable way. The way that confuses opponents because it does not follow any pattern. They walked to the preparation chamber where the combat simulation would take place. The room was large, with walls that could project any environment the operators wanted to create. For this match, they had chosen a simple open space. There would be no places to hide, no advantages for either fighter except skill and speed. The Railbolt launcher was waiting for them. It was a beautiful piece of human engineering, a long barrel made of special metals that could handle extreme temperatures, a firing mechanism that used electromagnetic force to accelerate projectiles at speeds that no human weapon had achieved before. To Jiwoo, it looked almost alive, waiting to be used. How does it work? Kira asked. She had entered quietly, and Jiwoo had not noticed her. She was examining the weapon with the same detached interest a scientist might examine an insect. It fires projectiles at extremely high speed, Jiwoo explained, using electromagnetic force. Primitive, Kira said, but she did not say it with anger. She said it with the tone of someone stating a fact. I have seen similar weapons. They are simple to predict. The projectile travels in a straight line. The only variable is the speed. Simple. She picked up the weapon and held it like she had been using such things for thousands of years. She probably had. She aimed it at Jiwoo, and Jiwoo's entire body went still. The simulation begins in 1 hour, Kira said. She lowered the weapon. I am looking forward to this, Jiwoo. It has been many years since I faced a new opponent. It has been many years since I faced any opponent that might surprise me. Perhaps today will be that day. In his room, Jiwoo tried to sleep. He could not. He thought about Earth, about his parents, about his sister who was still in school. He thought about all the people who were depending on him, even though they did not know it. He thought about what it would mean if Earth became a resource colony, if humans lost their freedom. He also thought about Kira, about her perfect movements and her 50,000 years of experience. She was older than his entire species. How could he possibly defeat someone like that? But as Jiwoo lay in the darkness, he realized something. He did not have to defeat Kira. He just had to surprise her. He just had to do one thing that she could not predict. One moment where her ancient, perfect knowledge did not apply. He got out of bed and began to stretch, warming his muscles. He practiced movements that violated every rule of proper combat technique. He practiced falling in ways that should have ended in injury. He practiced rolling with unstable balance. He did all the things that made military trainers shake their heads and tell him to learn the right way. Tomorrow, those wrong ways would be his strength. When morning came, Ji-woo walked to the simulation chamber. Kira was already there, waiting. She wore fighting clothes, simple and practical. Her silver skin seemed to glow under the artificial lights. She looked at Ji-woo with those ancient eyes, and Ji-woo saw something there, curiosity. She genuinely wanted to see what he could do. "Are you ready?" the operator asked from the observation booth above them. "Yes," Kira said. "Yes," Ji-woo said. "Then begin." The fight was about to change everything. The simulation chamber was silent. Ji-woo and Kira stood 30 meters apart, weapons lowered but ready. For a moment, nothing happened. Then Kira moved. She was impossibly fast. Ji-woo barely saw her cross half the distance before she was nearly upon him. Her movements were perfect, efficient, like water flowing downhill without any waste or hesitation. She raised her hand to strike, and Ji-woo dove to the side. But even his dive was different from what Kira expected. He did not dive clean and straight. Instead, he dove at an angle, his body rolling awkwardly as if he was losing control. Kira's strike passed where his head had been, and for the first time, Ji-woo saw something change in her expression. Not surprise exactly, but a slight shift. A recalibration. They separated. Kira moved back to a distance, and Ji-woo stood again. His heart was beating very fast, but he forced himself to breathe calmly. Kira was studying him now, the way a scientist studies an experiment. She was analyzing what he had just done, trying to understand his pattern. "You fight without rhythm," Kira said. It was not a question. "I fight how I fight," Ji-woo replied. It was the only answer he had. Kira picked up the Railbolt launcher. She loaded a bolt with smooth, practiced movements. She raised the weapon and aimed directly at Ji-woo's chest. This was a real shot. In the simulation, the Railbolt was programmed to stun instead of kill, but Ji-woo would still feel it. A direct hit to the chest at this distance would be devastating. "Try to dodge this," Kira said, and fired. The Railbolt traveled at nearly 1,000 meters per second. It was barely visible, just a streak of light crossing the 30 meters between them. To any trained fighter, it would be impossible to avoid. There was no reaction time fast enough. No human reflexes could process that speed and move in response. But Ji-woo did not try to process it. He did not think about the trajectory or calculate angles. Instead, he simply felt fear and let his body react. He dropped into a low crouch that was completely unstable, completely wrong by any standard of combat training. His center of gravity dropped too low. A normal person would have fallen on their face. The Railbolt passed through the space where his chest had been exactly 1 nanosecond before. In the observation booth, Captain Teo felt his breath catch. Everyone watching saw what just happened. Ji-woo had moved in a way that should have been impossible, not because of superhuman reflexes or enhanced speed, but because he had done something so fundamentally wrong that Kira's perfect knowledge of combat had not accounted for it. Kira's eyes widened. For just a moment, an actual flicker of surprise crossed her ancient face. But she did not hesitate. While Ji-woo was still low in his unstable crouch, Kira charged. She crossed the distance in 3 powerful bounds, and this time Ji-woo could not dodge. She grabbed him and threw him across the chamber with controlled strength. Ji-woo crashed into the wall, and for a moment the world was stars and pain. He pushed himself up. His ribs hurt. His shoulder hurt. But he was still moving, still fighting. Kira was coming at him again, this time with a series of strikes that were so precise and so fast that Ji-woo could not see them coming. He could only react at the last second, throwing up his arms to block, taking hits on his forearms instead of his head. Then Jiwoo moved differently. While blocking one of Kira's strikes, he rolled to the side in a way that seemed to go against physics. He was off balance, unstable, moving in a direction his body should not be able to move. Kira's follow-up strike missed him completely. For just a moment, she was exposed. Jiwoo sprinted forward, not with a carefully calculated approach, but with wild speed. He tackled Kira at an angle that no tactical analysis would recommend. They both crashed to the ground. The Railbolt launcher flew from Kira's hands and slid across the chamber floor. They struggled on the ground, each fighter trying to gain the upper position. But Kira was stronger, and her technique was perfect. She reversed the position with a movement that seemed to bend time and space, and suddenly she was on top of Jiwoo. She could kill him now. One blow to the temple would end the simulation. Instead, she reached over and grabbed the Railbolt launcher, which had slid within arm's reach. She tossed it to Jiwoo. "Take it," she said. "Let us see what you do." Jiwoo caught the launcher and rolled away from Kira. He jumped to his feet and raised the weapon. Kira stood as well, completely unhurried. She looked at Jiwoo with those ancient eyes. She was giving him a clear shot, point-blank range, no defense possible. Jiwoo fired. The Railbolt streaked out of the barrel. Kira was 5 meters away. There was no possible way to dodge, except that Kira did not try to dodge in the normal sense. Instead, she tilted her body. Just a tiny tilt, just enough. Perhaps 3 centimeters of movement. It was not a dodge. It was simply being in a slightly different place than where the Railbolt was traveling. The bolt passed through the air where her chest had been, missing by the thinnest margin possible. It was an impossible feat of precision and control. It was also something that only someone with 50,000 years of combat experience could do. But then something happened that no one expected. Kira stepped forward into the path of the ejected casing that had been expelled from the back of the Railbolt launcher. She reached out, and her hand closed around it mid-air. She caught the hot metal casing gently, as if catching a small bird, and then walked toward Jiwoo. The simulation chamber went completely silent. Kira stood directly in front of Jiwoo. She held out the casing and handed it to him. Her silver hand was steady, and when Jiwoo took the casing, he felt how warm it was. "You surprised me," Kira said simply. "Twice. Once with your unstable movement, and once with your complete disregard for tactical sense when you tackled me. A perfect tactical fighter would have created distance. You did the opposite. You did the thing that made no logical sense, and it worked." She turned away and looked up at the observation booth where the judges were waiting. "The simulation is over," she announced, "and humanity has won their chance." The observation chamber erupted into noise. Human observers were shouting in celebration. Valthani delegates were arguing with each other, their voices rising in levels of argument that Jiwoo had never heard before. In the center of it all stood Kira, looking at the Railbolt casing that Jiwoo still held in his hands. Captain Teo rushed down from the observation booth and embraced Jiwoo, regardless of his injuries. Jiwoo did not feel the pain anymore. He felt alive in a way that he had never felt before. An hour later, a formal session of the Galactic Council convened on Kepler 7. The chamber was vast and cold, filled with representatives from dozens of species. Some were humanoid. Others were creatures of pure energy or silicon-based beings that barely resembled living things. But all of them were ancient. All of them had been civilizations for thousands of years or more. Kira stood before the council and delivered her report. She spoke in a calm, measured voice, presenting facts as she always did. But something in her tone was different. There was no contempt. There was something almost like respect. "I have conducted the combat demonstration against the human fighter as requested," Kira said. "The human demonstrated capabilities that cannot be predicted using our current combat models. The human does not fight with established technique or doctrine. Instead, the human fights with a form of controlled unpredictability. They break rules in ways that create advantage." One of the council members, a being of pure crystalline structure, asked a question. "Can you explain this more clearly? How does breaking rules create advantage?" "For 50,000 years, we have perfected combat," Kira said. "Every move has been analyzed. Every technique has been tested. Every situation has been evaluated. Our knowledge is complete. Because of this completeness, our actions have become predictable. A skilled opponent can anticipate our movements because they follow established patterns. The human does not follow patterns. They have not had 50,000 years to establish doctrine. Instead, they have imperfection. They have fear. They have the willingness to try things that should not work. And sometimes, those things do work." She paused. More importantly, the humans showed something else. They showed the ability to adapt within a single combat encounter. They learned from my attacks and changed their strategy. They noticed my precision and used that against me by doing the opposite of what precision would dictate. The council debated for hours. Some species argued that one combat encounter did not prove anything. Others pointed out that humanity had less than 100 years of space history and could not possibly contribute meaningfully to galactic affairs. But Kira's testimony carried weight. She had spent 10,000 years building a reputation for accurate assessment. When Kira said something was formidable, other species listened. Finally, the vote was called. The decision was unanimous. Humanity would be accepted into the Galactic Council as a full member species with all rights and responsibilities. Earth would remain independent and autonomous. Humans would be allowed to develop their own technology and military without interference. When Tayo heard the results, he contacted Earth immediately. The news spread across the planet like light. Celebrations erupted in every city. Humans had faced the ancient Valthani and had earned respect. They had proven that youth and unpredictability could stand against age and perfection. But Kira did not attend the celebrations. Instead, she requested a private meeting with Teo and Jiwoo. They met in a small conference room with no observers. Kira carried with her a container made of special material that seemed to reflect light in impossible ways. "I have been thinking about what happened during the combat simulation," Kira said. She sat across from them, her perfect posture unchanged. "I have been thinking about it for the entire council session, and I have realized something that troubles me." She opened the container. Inside was a collection of items, artifacts, and tools from different civilizations. Each one represented a memory, a moment in time across 50,000 years of history. "For 50,000 years, I have been the perfect warrior," Kira continued. "I have never lost a fight. I have never faced an opponent that I could not defeat. But I have also never been surprised, not truly surprised. I knew all the variations, all the techniques, all the possible strategies. Nothing was unknown to me anymore. I thought this meant I was strong. Now I understand that it might have meant I was becoming weak." She took out the Railbolt casing that Jiwoo had handed to her. "You did something that I could not predict. You did something that violated every principle of tactical strategy. And it worked. You know what that means? It means that for 50,000 years, I have been practicing one way of fighting, and I have forgotten how to be creative. I have forgotten how to be alive." Jiwoo did not know what to say. Kira was one of the most powerful beings in the galaxy, and yet she was telling them that she felt something was missing from her life. "I want to study your species," Kira said to Teo, "not as subjects or enemies, but as partners. I want to understand how humans think. I want to learn how to break the rules the way you do. I want to remember what it feels like to be uncertain about the outcome of something." Teo leaned forward. "What are you proposing?" "A formal alliance," Kira said. "Not just a political agreement, but a true partnership. Your military will train with our military. Your scientists will work with our scientists. And perhaps most importantly, we will learn from each other. Humans can teach us unpredictability. We can teach you strategy. Together we could create something new, something that neither of us could create alone. She held out the Railbolt casing to Teo. Keep this. It is a symbol. A symbol of the moment when humanity showed us that even 50,000 years of perfection might have a limit. That young species can teach old ones new things. That the future is uncertain, and that perhaps uncertainty is what keeps us alive. Teo accepted the casing. It was still warm, as if the Railbolt had been fired only moments before. "Why are you doing this?" Jiwoo asked. "You could have destroyed us. You could have made Earth a resource colony. No one would have questioned your decision." Kira stood and looked out the window at the vast expanse of space beyond Kepler-7. "Because I realized something during the simulation," she said quietly. "I realized that for 50,000 years I have been living, but not truly alive. And you, Jiwoo, in your brief moment of unpredictable action, showed me that being alive means being willing to not know what happens next. It means being willing to break the rules and see what happens. It means being willing to be surprised." She turned back to them. "Humanity reminds the Valthani what it means to truly live." 6 months after the Railbolt demonstration, the Joint Human-Valthani Research Station began operations. It was a massive structure orbiting Earth, built by both species working together. Humans and Valthani walked through the corridors side by side. Engineers from Earth worked with Valthani scientists. Military strategists from both species gathered in conference rooms to plan together. Kira had kept her word. She had not simply offered alliance. She had become deeply involved in every aspect of the partnership. She spent hours with Jiwoo in the training rooms, learning how humans thought and fought. She would watch Jiwoo train and ask endless questions. Why did he move that way? What was his reasoning? How did he decide what to do when there was no clear answer? Jiwoo found himself teaching an ancient warrior how to think differently. It was strange and fascinating. Kira had been fighting for 50,000 years, but she had been fighting the same way. Now she was trying to understand how to break her own patterns, how to be unpredictable, when everything in her ancient knowledge told her to be precise and calculated. "The problem," Kira said one day during a training session, "is that every rule I know tells me that what you do should not work. When I watch you move without perfect control, my entire training tells me you should lose. But you do not lose. You win by doing the thing that should not work." "Maybe the rules are wrong," Jiwoo suggested. Kira considered this seriously. "Or perhaps," she said, "there are many sets of rules, and the universe does not care which one you follow, as long as you follow some rules and break others in unexpected ways." Captain Teo worked closely with the Valthani Council leadership on military strategy. The humans brought something entirely new to the table. They were not bound by thousands of years of tactical doctrine. They could think laterally, creatively, in ways that the Valthani had forgotten how to do. And the Valthani, in turn, brought strategic wisdom and technological advances that took human military thinking to entirely new levels. Together, they began designing hybrid warfare tactics. They created new weapons that combined human innovation with Valthani engineering. They developed strategies that no single species could have developed alone. The other civilizations in the galaxy began to notice the partnership. Some were curious, some were concerned. All of them recognized that something important was happening. The most surprising development came when the Valthani shared certain technologies with Earth. Advanced medicine that could treat diseases that had plagued humanity for thousands of years. Clean energy technology that could power entire cities without pollution. The humans shared their own innovations in return. Artistic traditions that the Valthani had long forgotten. Philosophical approaches to problem-solving that emphasized hope and possibility over cold logic. One day, Teo received a message from Earth. His daughter was now 8 years old. The message contained a video of her in school, where she was teaching other children about Valthani history. She had learned that Kira was 50,000 years old, and she was explaining to her classmates that age did not mean someone was always right. It meant they had more experience, but sometimes younger people could think in ways that older people forgot how to do. Teo showed the video to Kira. For a long moment, she said nothing. Then she asked to see it again. And again. Finally, she said something that surprised Teo. "Your daughter understands something that it took me 50,000 years to learn," Kira said. "She understands that there is value in perspective, that different ways of thinking are not inferior, they are just different. And different can be powerful." The first joint military operation was planned carefully. A region of space that was threatened by a hostile force required intervention. The Valthani had the military strength and strategic knowledge. The humans had innovative tactics and unpredictable approaches. Together, they created a plan that combined both strengths. The hostile force was not prepared for what they encountered. They expected Valthani tactics because the Valthani were famous for their predictable perfection. Instead, they found themselves facing hybrid strategies that broke all the rules they knew. The human forces moved in ways that seemed inefficient, but turned out to be devastatingly effective. The Valthani forces provided overwhelming power combined with the ability to adapt to human innovations in real time. The operation succeeded. The threat was eliminated. No lives were lost on the human Valthani side. Across the galaxy, species began to understand that something had changed. Humanity was not a young species that needed to be protected. Humanity was a powerful ally that brought new ways of thinking to ancient problems. More species began requesting partnerships with humans. But Teo was careful. He did not accept every offer. He understood that what had happened between humans and Valthani was special. It was not just a military alliance. It was a genuine meeting of minds, a real exchange of ideas and culture. 1 year after the Railbolt demonstration, Kira and Teo stood together on the observation deck of the Joint Research Station. They looked out at the Earth below, a small blue planet that had launched humanity into the galaxy less than a century ago. "I have been thinking," Kira said, "about what will happen next. Your species is young, but you are not weak. Already, some of the older species view humans with concern. They see unpredictability as something dangerous. They do not understand, as I have come to understand, that unpredictability combined with purpose is not chaos. It is evolution." "What are you saying?" Teo asked. "I am saying that the future will not belong to the species that has perfected the past," Kira said. "The future will belong to the species that is willing to break the old rules and create new ones. Humanity knows how to do this naturally. The Valthani are learning. If we remain partners, if we continue to teach each other, then perhaps together we can shape the galaxy in ways that no single species could." She turned to Teo and placed the original Railbolt casing in his hands. It had been polished and mounted in special materials. It was no longer just a weapon component. It was a symbol of everything that had changed. "Keep this," Kira said, "but not as a trophy of victory. Keep it as a reminder that sometimes the most powerful moment is not when someone wins, but when they choose to understand. When I caught that Railbolt, I caught something more important than an object. I caught a glimpse of the future, and I chose to embrace it rather than reject it." Teo held the casing carefully. He thought about his daughter on Earth, about all the humans who would grow up in a galaxy where humans were respected and valued. He thought about all the Valthani who would learn to break their own patterns and discover new ways of being. "The Railbolt that started everything," Teo said softly. "It became something more than a weapon." "Yes," Kira agreed. "It became a symbol of change, of growth, of two species learning that together they could be greater than they ever could be apart. They stood in silence, watching the stars. The future was uncertain. It was unpredictable. It was full of possibilities that neither species could see clearly. And for the first time in 50,000 years, Kira felt something that she thought she had lost: hope. And for the first time in his life, Teo understood that humanity's greatest strength was not just that they could break rules. It was that they could teach others to break rules too.